The UN Special Envoy to Syria says Saturday's massacre in Aleppo province was an horrific event in which more than 130 people were killed. Buses filled with evacuees trying to escape areas besieged by rebels were attacked as they waited to leave. Survivors are now in hospitals in government-held areas.
الحمد على السلامة حبيبي.
نيلو عمو حمد على السلامة. نيلو عمو حمد على السلامة.
دخيل الضحية واحنا. منيحة أنت يا عمري.
نيلو أنا شهودة نيلو.
Well, among the more than 130 who were slaughtered, 67 were children. Survivors eventually made it to safety after the evacuation resumed under a deal struck between the government and militants. Those who were there have been describing horrific scenes, as Lizzie Phelan reports.
The horrors of a blast targeting evacuees from the besieged Syrian towns of Foua and Kafraya last weekend continue to plague the victims. This Damascus hotel has been turned into refugee accommodation and is full of their families. In the chaotic aftermath of the attack, many here couldn't reach their loved ones.
3 buses arrived in Aleppo today from Idlib. We have 300 missing. Among them, there are wounded people.
My heart is broken. My wife and daughter are missing.
These parents are the so-called lucky ones. Today, their sons who were on those attacked buses will come home. Each second feels like an age. Ghada asks a passerby if he's seen her anxiously awaited son. Minutes later, he's back in her arms. Ahmed's mum too cries tears of relief. He was lucky to survive this. That horrendous blast that claimed the lives of over 130 people, mostly children, who witnesses say had been lured to a vehicle distributing potato chips to maximize the death toll.
People in military uniforms didn't let us get off the buses. Then a van came and they began to hand out snacks. The children rushed off the buses. Almost all the children that were with us ran after the food. And then it exploded. It was horrific. Everything was on fire. People were burned alive. In the front buses, there were a lot of dead people.
In the aftermath of the attack, the mainstream media immediately tried to make it look as though rebel forces were unlikely responsible for the carnage. Those same al-Qaeda-inspired rebels who have a history of inciting sectarian murder against the Shia people of Foua and Kafraya. In fact, everyone here, even 11-year-old Abdallah, tells a story of being threatened on their journeys out of the besieged towns.
The militants treated us badly. They were intimidating us, threatening to kill us. I was afraid the militants would beat me. They looked so scary. They had long beards and always wore masks. They were very scary. My grandmother is still there. I don't know what's happened to her. The blast was horrible. I saw other children burning in the buses. I am so afraid of explosions.
Militants in pickups were with us. They were on the right and left. They frightened the children. They were singing, "We come here to kill you."
For Ahmed and Mohammed, it's a painful homecoming. Every other makeshift apartment here has an empty space. Friends and family they had to leave behind. And some who will never return. Many are simply waiting for the rebels to give back the bodies of their loved ones, those who didn't survive the brutal sieges of Foua and Kafraya.
That was Lizzie Phelan there. Well, we can cross live now to Damascus and speak with Patrick Henningsen. He's the executive editor at 21stCenturyWire.com. Patrick, good evening. We understand that you've just returned from where those attacks were carried out. Can you tell us your experiences? We understand you've seen the victims and spoken to the victims' families also. What have you seen and heard?
Well, what we saw is a really harrowing tale. It's hard to describe, to put into words, but very emotional testimonies by the victims' families. Stories about a long bus ride from Idlib to Rashadin to the rallying point where there was going to be an exchange, and something that would normally take 45 minutes, it took up to 7 hours, and being taunted along the way, and being kept on the buses for 48 hours with very small rations, and then children being baited out of the buses, and to their death, essentially, for those victims. Very much a highly organized affair, and a premeditated affair, and very carefully organized for maximum casualties. And that's just a sort of the beginning of that story. But there is a lot more to it, and a lot more suspicion, about some of the people who were there. Of course, their affiliations being with extremists as well, and bodies being taken away, children being taken away, and Turkish ambulances seemingly on standby, according to the witnesses there, which is very odd. Seem to have been ready to spring into action and take away people to where? We're not sure.
Okay, now Patrick, no one's claimed responsibility as yet for this horrific attack, but from what you've gleaned from people you've spoken to, where does the suspicion lie?
Well, clearly extremists, Ahrar al-Sham, al-Nusra, these groups are active in the area. But worse than that, one witness said they were taken off the bus and then filmed when they were trying to tend to the victims after the blast, and then put back on the bus. And seemingly this is all done at gunpoint. The shocking thing about this is the story that came out in the Western mainstream media bears zero resemblance to the testimonies of multiple eyewitnesses at the scene. So one can only conclude that what we saw in major Western media outlets immediately in the aftermath of this incident was factually untrue. So you have to ask the question, where were they getting their information from? Were they getting them from extremist sources themselves? Were they getting that information from the white helmets? And how come it bears no resemblance to any of the eyewitnesses at the Jubrin refugee camp outside of Aleppo that not only that we spoke to, but other journalists spoke to as well. So it's difficult to square all that with the media reporting with reality in this case.
It's very difficult to get a clear picture, isn't it, exactly what is going on. But Patrick, look, we do thank you for giving us your experiences. You've been at the site, I understand, very recently and saw many painful things too, but we appreciate you coming on to RT. That was Patrick Henningsen, Executive Editor of 21stCenturyWire.com. Thank you.